Hello, everybody. My name is Carolyn. I'm a clean real-time stenographer and happy in this career. I would like to share with you about how to become a clean real-time stenographer.
To brief or not to brief? That is the question. Compressing multiple words, or sometimes a long multisyllabic word, into a brief in stenography means that you can type it with one stroke instead of multiple strokes. Then you just define this brief in your personal CAT dictionary, computer-aided transcription software dictionary, and memorize the way you defined it to type it as a shortcut. If you like my videos, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share the link. Help the YouTube algorithm recommend my videos to more people who might be interested in this career. So should you use briefs a lot, a little, or not at all? I've read somewhere in a court reporter's forum that someone did not use any briefs at all and just typed everything phonetically and had no problems becoming a court reporter. Never suffered from carpal tunnel syndrome either. She said that she learned no brief. So it is possible. On the other hand, there's Mark Kislingbury, whose theory, Magnum Steno, is very intensive on turning everything into a brief form. We're going to discuss today how these two approaches differ.
Okay, here we have a graph. On the x-axis is how much you use briefs, from 0 to a lot. On the y-axis is phonetically typing out what you hear, from seldom to everything being typed out. And at the upper left-hand corner of the graph, you have the people who type everything out and don't ever brief anything. At the bottom right-hand corner of the graph, you have people like Mark Kislingbury, who brief everything and hardly have to phonetically type anything out. In the middle of the graph is where people type phonetically and do some briefs.
So what's the rock and the hard place? The rock is doing briefs, and the hard place is doing everything phonetically. Let me explain. When you do a brief, it compresses a few words or a long multisyllabic word into one stroke. When you type, you have to remember that those words are one stroke. Then when you come across other words that are not briefed, you have to type those with multiple keystrokes. This makes your typing lumpy, if you know what I mean. And it's harder on the brain to use a brief. First, you have to memorize it. Then you have to incorporate it into practice. The pros of using a lot of briefs is that your hands get a break from having to hit the keyboard so many times because it's a less stroke-intensive way to type stenographically. And the potential of a brief is that you can take on way more workload in a workday than people who type everything out phonetically, because your fingers won't be as tired if you brief. The other thing is you can type way faster, like Mark Kislingbury does. He gets up to 300 words a minute. That's just not possible with phonetically typing everything out, because you'll come across the hard place. That's trying to squeeze more strokes into the milliseconds of time that are needed to fit them into the speed of speech. And then the machine stacks strokes together and makes them turn into gibberish. That happens a lot more if you type stenographically with a stroke-intensive method. If you type everything out phonetically in a stroke-intensive way, you'll also run across the problem of stacking. You'll run across the problem of stacking, but also the problem of carpal tunnel syndrome. That's the hard place. Typing everything phonetically is easier on the brain and harder on the hands. So my recommendation is memorize as many briefs as you can, incorporate as many as you can, but don't overdo it to the point where you cannot handle the mental load. because it's mental gymnastics to type with briefs, and using them to the point of Magnum Steno could be beyond some people's brain's RAM ability to do. Somewhere in the Reddit thread, stenography, they discuss Magnum Steno, and someone called it a, quote, mindfuck. Pardon the language. That's what they mean. It's very difficult on the brain to memorize and use so many briefs. This is why this career is best suited to introverts who have a high mental RAM and are able to incorporate a lot of briefs. It is also why it can be a six-figure income, but only if you're one of those people who can take on a pretty big workload by having your hands not be so tired because you brief a lot. And also, only if you're one of those clean, real-time stenographers who don't have to clean up your transcript a lot in post-production.
Okay, so you see, briefing or not briefing becomes a problem to think about. How much do you want to brief? Think about that. If you don't brief at all, you run the risk of carpal tunnel. And you also run the risk of stacking. And you run the risk that your workload will feel very tiring. Your workday will feel very tiring to your hands. But if you brief way too much and you can't mentally handle it, that's no good either. So we'll have to think about that. How much do you want to brief? We will discuss in future videos techniques for learning briefs and incorporating them, how to memorize more briefs and incorporate them into your typing. Okay, that's all for today. If you have any comments, please put them in the chat. Tell me what you would like to see more of in the future. We are going through the school methods right now. Right now we're just going through the basics and foundational understanding of this career. In the future, we're going to head towards the career part of it, and I'll discuss more about that. Okay, bye everybody.